Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the GD Report. I am D,
And I'm G. Happy to be here.
and and my beard's starting to come back in, so I'm gonna have to do something about that again.
Right.
Hope everybody's doing well. Everybody's staying safe. We are on day 99 of the Biden-Harris presidency, and so tonight we're actually going to have a speech before Congress. I'm going to do everything I can not to call it a
State of the Union.
SOTU. It's not the State of the Union because they technically are not. Don't give that speech in their first year. So, but he's addressing a joint session of Congress. Only going to be about, I think, about 400 people in the room, and there's normally about 1,600.
Yeah, it's invitation only, right?
Yeah, it's COVID protocols as well. So thought we would spend a little bit of time on the first part here talking about our grades for the first 100 days. And I might note that he's going to take this on the road to talk about his first 100 days tomorrow, with his first stop strategically being in the state of Georgia. And he's going to take a chance to stop by, and I think he's going all the way to Plains. He's going to visit with Jimmy and Rosalind Carter tomorrow, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, there's not too many visits left in them, and they're both for over 90.
They weren't able to travel to the inauguration.
Yeah.
So what's your grade on the first 100 days?
I'd probably give him an A-.
And what's the rationale for that? You got to give me more than that, dude. Come on.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's gotten a lot of stuff done. He's reinstated the Paris Climate Accords. He pushed through the $1,600 stimulus check. He's got he pushed through the 1.9 trillion plan, America Recovery Act plan. He's got some things on his plate that need to get resolved, I think, for me to give him an A or an A+. He needs to do something about Iran and their nuclear proliferation program, because every day we wait, they're just going to enrich more uranium and get better prepared for making a bomb.
Now that there was the attack on their nuclear facilities a couple weeks ago.
Well, they're not saying that was an attack. They're saying that was an inadvertent accident.
Well, that's not what Iran's saying, and that's not.
No, that is what they're saying. They said it was an accident.
Well, Israel is thought to be responsible for that.
Well, I didn't say who was responsible, but they're saying it was an accident. I mean, they're probably saying that knowing that it was Israel, and they're trying to figure out some way to respond. But the other thing is,
they don't want to lose face and say that they were attacked.
Right. The other thing is, the rumor in State Department circles is that they've always had the bomb since the Khomeini came in the early '80s. They've always had the bomb, and this is just basically having the ability to make more bombs, which is what we're trying to prevent. Either way, I've always thought it was kind of hypocritical that countries that have nuclear weapons tell other countries that they can't have nuclear weapons because you're just not responsible enough. I
tend to feel the same way. I used to kind of have that view where I felt like, only the responsible countries could have it, and then we allowed Donald Trump to be president of our country.
Right, with his finger on the button.
That kind of changed my view of us throwing rocks at glass houses.
Right, absolutely. Well, then he's got the crisis on the border. He's got, and I'm not sure how you're going to deal with this, but there are recount efforts underway in Arizona and soon to be Michigan by a company that, for all intents and purposes, appears to be hired for their ability to change votes. So all that's doing is they're not going to reverse the election. All of you out there that think Donald Trump is going to be back in office by August, like Pillow Man says. That's just a pipe dream. The only way Trump's getting back in office is if he wins the election in 2024.
Yeah, he first has to run.
Yeah, first has to run, which I'm convinced he's not gonna. But the only reason these two recount efforts are underway is to sow doubt with the electorate that the election was fair. They're basically going to claim that it was stolen from Donald Trump.
Well, it's a great fundraising tool.
Yeah, it is a great fundraising tool. So Republicans seem to be, spending that, sharing their cash right and left. And so he's got, I don't know how you combat that when they come out and say, hey, we did a recount and all these votes were different. I don't know how the Biden administration is going to handle that. He's got another problem with New York and California. And you can't tell me that the Trump administration didn't administer the final result of the census through whatever they did. But I don't see how California and New York, the two most populous states in the country, could lose seats in the census, but they sure did. New York is looking at suing and try to force a recount of the census with the Republican.
I'm gonna sound like some of my QAnon admirers that like to send me messages, but it wouldn't shock me if there's not a lot of census surveys sitting at a post office somewhere.
Oh yeah, I'm sure there is. So that's the other thing. He's got the joy problem at the post office. He's working hard to get rid of him. So he's got some successes. He's got some plays that are moving down the field but haven't hit the goalpost yet. He's got a huge, almost 25,000 now migrant children problem at the border. And how you deal with those. The best way, I'm going to sneeze here in just 1 second. Maybe not.
The GD report brought to you by Nasonex.
Right. The best way to deal with those migrant children is almost every one of them has a relative in the U.S. And they should do like they did with the Obama administration. They should take their name and number, release them to their relative, and have them show up for a court date.
Well, aren't all those kids being given Kamala Harris's book?
Yeah, so that's another myth. So Republicans said they were every child in an ICE detention facility was being given Kamala Harris's book. As it turns out, and I can't remember who did this, some reporting agency. I want to say Slate or Salon, but they found out that one book was donated as part of a book drive, and a child, like a 10-year-old child, actually picked it out to read. And that's where this big myth of every child getting Kamala Harris's book was put forth. So,
well, that big myth was put forth, I'd like to point out, in the New York Post.
Yep.
It was published, and the reporter for that, I don't know if you saw this story.
Yeah.
She resigned her job last night and said she was forced by her editors to write that story, even though she told them it was a false story.
Right.
So that's the kind of stuff that, I think that there's a certain amount of the right-wing conspiracy that there's nothing Biden can do about it. I mean, it's on one hand, you can't give it air, but on the other hand, you got to keep an eye on it to make sure it doesn't turn into a whiskey rebellion.
Right. Let me just say that I have 30 years of media experience, and I've worked for some of the biggest names in American journalism: Dallas Morning News, Houston Chronicle, CNN, LA Times, the now defunct Rocky Mountain News. I've lived and worked in every time zone. And in all my years in the business, I have never seen a story fabricated intentionally by the editor. Now, I was in the media during the Stephen Glass episode, where he fabricated just about every story he wrote. but that was him. That was him trying to get ahead, trying to come up with these sensational stories that, later on nobody could find any of the sources for. But having an editor say, "This is your story, and you're going to write it this way," I've never seen that in 30 years in the business.
So you're taking the side of the New York Post in this one, saying the reporter made that up?
No, I'm saying no. I'm saying that I firmly believe the reporter, and shame on those editors for doing that.
Well, I'm
This is
going to
the
take
first
your side of
instance.
it. I'm going to take your side of it, but a little different spin on it. I'm
Okay.
going to tell you, I agree. I've been around a lot of newsrooms. I've never seen an editor say, "You will write it this way." Now I've seen them give them assignments, and I've seen reporters not be happy with their assignments.
Yeah.
But I don't think the editors made her do this. I think the editors' bosses told the editors, "If you're going to still work here, this story is going to happen."
Right.
So I
Yep.
think it's a Murdoch-owned paper.
Well, they have no integrity. Those the people in the Murdoch family. Well, there is one. He's out of the business now, but one of the brothers who was set to take it over, basically said it was such a slimy business he didn't want to have anything to do with it.
Well, and I mean, it just goes. I know we're getting way off on our tangent here. I haven't even given my grade for the first 100 days, but I'll just say this: there was also a story that was hyped by Fox News, another Murdoch entity, this week, saying that the Biden administration was planning on taking away people's meat.
Right.
So,
well,
part of the Green New Deal was to get rid of beef and get rid of your hamburger, and it went so far as Larry Kudlow, the former advisor of the former Trump administration, said that Joe Biden was going to force people to drink grain-based and plant-based. It was plant-based, not grain-based. Get the quote right. He's going to force people to drink plant-based beer, which, hate to tell him, but all beer is plant-based.
Yeah. Hops, hello.
Barley, hops, corn, rye.
Well, I'll say this, and then we can get your grade. But the Murdochs are the same family that lost Sky News, the biggest news agency in Europe, because they were listening in on sensitive telephone calls from politicians in the royal family. And when it came out that they were doing that, there was a big public outcry, and the government pulled their license. And that organization is now owned by Comcast. So yeah, they have no integrity. It's hard to believe anything that they say. This is the same company that employs Tucker Carlson, who just makes stuff up every night. So anyway, what would your grade be for Mr. Biden's?
Well, I was going to give him just a little bit above you, not quite an A plus, but give him an A. And I think you mentioned a lot of my points already that I would make, but I think number one, just restoring the dignity to the office and the decency to the office, I think has been key, because I don't wake up every morning wondering what he tweeted. I think he's taken one golf trip in his first 99 days.
Right.
And it was not to a Trump-owned course. I might mention.
Right.
I think you look at the type of cabinet that he's nominated. It's a beautiful cross section of our country: men, women, different races, different religions. The judges, the first slate of federal judges he just named. You've got a Muslim in that group, which will be the highest ranked Muslim in the country. And I mean, we're just seeing, and it's funny because there was a lot of opposition to Joe Biden in the Democratic primaries last year or two. Yeah, I guess about it. I guess it was last year, but
he was stuck till he got to South Carolina.
Jim Clyburn really saved it, but there was a lot of people that said, "Oh my gosh, he's a corporatist, and he's no better." I have friends that said he's no better than Trump. It's the same, and I think what we're seeing, a lot of people thought it was going to be a transitional presidency, and I think what we're seeing so far is that this is going to be a transformational presidency.
Yeah, I mean,
you look at some of the changes he's made and the way he's restored us in the world. I think we're set up for some really massive things to happen, especially if the infrastructure bill passes, which I know you and I debated on the pregame show. But I think we're set for a really big couple of years, and we'll see how the midterms go. But I think that we're set for a really big couple of years, and then really a monumental 4 years.
Well, the stock market just hit an all-time record high. So everyone who voted for Trump because of how great their 401k was doing, you guys ought to be taking a hard look at Biden for 2024. And
Well,
if
I
he
thought
gets,
I thought the stock market was going to crash.
well, that's what they all said, but we've seen nothing but good things. I mean, that is the thing about so far, and I know the first 100 days are your honeymoon, but we've had presidents that the first 100 days, basically did nothing. Dwight Eisenhower, well, I guess he went to Korea. But, everything that Biden's done has been good. I mean, if he
Well,
gets this $2 trillion,
yeah,
if he gets this $2 trillion infrastructure plan and then the $1 trillion plan that he's going to unveil tonight, if he gets those passed, which I don't think that's a slam dunk. I think that's going to be, I know that you think Mr. Manchin is going to get on board, but I'm not so sure. I think that guy's trouble. But if he gets those two things passed and the economy continues to pick up, I think we're at about 6%. The last number I saw was we're about 6% unemployment rate, whereas we were almost close to 15 at the height of the pandemic under Trump. That's another thing that Biden gets, high marks for. So maybe I should have given him an A, but Trump couldn't seem to figure out how to get, shots in arms. And under Biden, we have over 200 million people that have gotten at least their first shot. So,
yeah, I mean, his handling of the COVID virus alone ought to be is going to go down in history as saving millions of lives, and on top of that, helping the economy recover. Because if we didn't have this many people with vaccines right now, our economy would be in the crapper.
Yeah.
And so, I'll say this. Go ahead.
I was going to say, one of our good friends that we're going to go out to dinner with tonight, she's been basically, she wouldn't go to a restaurant because she didn't want to get COVID. Well, she got her second shot today. Feels great. She's like, hey, let's go out and celebrate. So, yeah, we're getting back to normal. By the end of the summer, we'll have enough people vaccinated that whether this is true or not, we'll achieve herd immunity. And when I say true or not, I'm not sure I believe in herd immunity.
Well, I think it's going to have to pick up because it's starting to drop off. We're starting to hit the portion of the population that is denying, that are the anti-vaxxers, and they think that Bill Gates is being injected into their bodies.
Right. Well, I mean, the people that say this was all a Democratic hoax, they must have had, it must be some hoax because it's affecting everybody all over the world. So my friends in Bangladesh and India, those countries are basically on lockdown now, the entire country, because COVID has kicked back up so hard. So, do what you need to do, get the shot, keep your mask on, be safe.
Well, I'll just say this too. One last thing on Biden is, it's not like he's exactly had a honeymoon, because he's faced obstruction across the board. Typically, when a president first comes into office, there can be a bipartisan bill, something like the COVID relief bill, which is pretty innocuous. It typically both sides will support it, and Republicans, it's all about not giving and that's part of our broken system, but it's all about not giving the other side a win.
Right.
All right. Well, so Mr. Biden gets good marks from us so far. We'll hear what he has to say in his speech tonight. Why don't we go down? Let's talk about. How about let's go to Supreme Court now? You want to do that? Let's talk about your favorite justice after Brett Kavanaugh, Amy Coney Barrett. What's happening with her?
Well, Justice Barrett, in her confirmation hearing, said that anytime there was a conflict of interest, that she would be the first to recuse herself, which I can't remember when a Supreme Court justice recused themselves. I don't think it's happened in my lifetime. I'd have to go back and check that, but
I actually think there was not to jump in here, but I think there were actually a couple cases that Justice Kagan recused herself on
Oh, you might
because
be right.
she had initially argued the original cases as Solicitor General.
Right. Yeah, you might be right about that. But so now we've got Miss Barrett's being asked to recuse herself. And why don't you tell us a little bit more about the case? Do you?
Yeah, so one of the Koch brother funded groups, which let's see if I can get the name of it up real quick. Got it right here. Okay.
Americans
One of
for
the Koch brother,
Prosperity.
yeah, the AFP, they actually spent millions of dollars running commercials advocating for her quick and swift confirmation to go through to the bench. They are actually involved in a couple of lawsuits where nonprofit political groups are required to report their donor information to the IRS, and they're suing to basically get out of doing that. They don't think that they constitutionally should have to do that, and she's been asked to recuse herself, and there were several senators, among them Sheldon Whitehouse, who asked her at her confirmation hearing if she would recuse herself. And she said, again, if there was a conflict of interest, she would step aside. They sent a letter to her asking her, and she did no such thing. She didn't even respond. She sat through the arguments today and said she'll rule on the case. So this is where the Supreme Court becomes part of the oligarchy, if it wasn't already.
Right. So I had a second to look up recusals, and boy, was I wrong. This is the American Bar Association Journal, and it says this is July 12th, 2016, but just goes to show you at that term that ended that July, so about a month before this article came out, Supreme Court justices recused themselves 180 times. So
man, you were way off, dude.
Yeah, 117 of those were because of previous work by Justice Elena Kagan. She was, as you said, Solicitor General. And Justice Sonia Sotomayor, she was a federal appeals court judge. 33 of the recusals were due to stock ownership in companies held by Chief Justice John Roberts and Justice Stephen Breyer and Sam Alito. Two of those recusals in decided cases didn't affect the outcome. Let's see, 15 recusals related to family ties of Justice Stephen G. Breyer, whose brother is a federal judge, and Justice Sam A. Alito, whose sister is a partner at K&L Gates. So, a lot more than I thought.
All right. Well, more to come on that story, I'm sure. What's our next topic?
Our next topic is my favorite mayor.
America's mayor.
America's mayor, right. Mr. Bastion of ethics himself, Mr. Rudy Giuliani, who, as they say, got a rude awakening this morning. You want to tell us more?
Yeah, absolutely. He actually, Mr. Giuliani, who is also former attorney for former President Donald Trump, had.
I love hearing that phrase.
I know, former President Donald Trump. I'll say it again.
Yeah, thanks.
He actually had 2 search warrants issued against him Wednesday. One at his Manhattan apartment and another at his office.
Yep, at his office, they took every electronic device.
Yep, they took electronic devices, paperwork, and they're thought that this is part of the same investigation into a lawyer and Giuliani ally, Victoria Toensing. She's a former federal prosecutor and senior Justice Department official. Toensing, you might know her husband a little bit better. Joseph DeGeneva, the Fox News contributor.
Right.
They both had an agreement with the Ukrainian prosecutors, part of an effort to collect information about Joe Biden's activities in Ukraine while he was vice president. Something tells me we are going to end up hearing from the former owner of a computer store. What do you think?
If they can find the guy.
I mean,
If it was a legitimate computer store, I mean, it shut down literally as soon as it handed the laptop off. So,
well, and here's the thing: if you conspire with the foreign government to falsify information and to, I mean, you've got conspiracy charges, you've got fraud charges. If there was money exchange, you could have international wire fund transfer charges.
right.
There could be tax issues. I mean, there's any number of charges here. My question is going to be, where does the investigation stop? Because if you go back to July of last year, the former, I enjoy saying this too, former Attorney General William Fred Flintstone Barr
Don't insult
said
Fred
that
Flintstone.
said that he had opened a special channel for Rudy Giuliani to submit information to them based on his investigations that he was finding.
Right.
And so my question is, was that special channel or whatever the phraseology he used, was that set up because he knew it was a farce and he wanted to just filter that information out? Or did he have special access where they were actually considering these things? And if they were and didn't investigate Giuliani for his sources and things like that, how complicit is Mr. Barr in this?
Yeah, well, that whole administration was just corrupt from top to bottom. So, and to answer that question, I don't know. I mean, Barr is pretty savvy, so you could see him playing Rudy like that. But you could also see him acquiescing to Mr. Trump and saying, "Oh yeah, we'll look into these things." And then, they, to my knowledge, they never did. As far as the laptop goes, the Hunter Biden laptop, I think what they did is they made up a bunch of stuff, stuck it on the laptop. I think Rudy made it up, stuck it on the laptop, gave it to this guy, and then he holds this press conference to say, "Hey, I got Hunter Biden's laptop. I don't know if there's anything on it or not." And then Rudy swoops in and picks it up, and I just think it was all a made up deal, just like that New York Post story.
Yeah, well, the right wing is going to be crowing about it, saying that this is all payback from Biden and things like that. When we know in reality, here's the thing on these types of investigations, and we've talked about this before. We talked about this in 2009, even before this podcast. You and I had many conversations about holding prior administrations accountable.
Yeah.
Because the issue is, if we don't hold them accountable, what's going to stop them from happening again?
Yeah, and doing it worse the second time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one thing that struck me in reading about these raids is that it's highly unusual for a lawyer to have their offices raided, and it's even more unusual to have a lawyer to the president's offices raided. And so I think Mr. Giuliani is in a lot of trouble. I think unlike his former boss, former President Donald Trump, I think he is looking at some serious time behind bars. So,
well, the thing about Donald Trump, which people still haven't learned the lesson about him, is that he never takes a fall for anything, but the people around him do.
Yep, always do. So now, if Rudy has some info that could see Donald Trump land in jail, I'll bet he'd be the first to use that and to get himself out of a jam. I mean, he'll still go to jail, but maybe not as long. So it's going to be a long road the next 3 years, but fun to watch.
Right. All right. So what's our next topic?
Our next topic is a person who has their own phrase in the gay community.
I'm gonna
His
make
name
I'm
is
gonna make you say
Rick's.
what that is.
What?
I want to make you say what that phrase is.
I'm not going to say it. I'm just going to say his name, Mr. Rick Santorum. So tell us, tell us what's going on with Mr. Rick.
Yeah, so he gave a speech on Friday before a group called the Young Americas Foundation, which I believe is a young conservative group.
Yes, it is.
And in his speech, he said, quote, "We birthed the nation from nothing. I mean, there was nothing here. I mean, yes, we have Native Americans, but candidly, there isn't much Native American culture in American culture." Prior to that, he talked about the fact that the people who, when he says we, he's talking about mostly Europeans. And so this is nothing more than a right-wing white supremacist ideology. Just, and he said the quiet part loud, and basically negated and tried to uh, present cultural uh, erasement of the tribal cultures, the way that the tribes faced genocide in real life, and trying to wipe away the history and say that there was nothing here when the European settlers landed, or I shouldn't call them settlers, occupationists when they took over. It always amazed me, and now I'm part Native American and I grew up around Native culture my whole life. And it always amazed me when I read in history about the doctrine of manifest destiny.
Right.
And, it was the fact that it was God's will for us to take it over, and
Yeah.
God's will for us to be from Atlantic to Pacific.
Yeah. That's white man arrogance.
Yeah. And again, the white supremacists cannot deal with the negative aspects of the past. They can't deal with it. They can't face it. And anytime people try to call them out on it, they want to complain and say, "Oh, you're rewriting history. And it's not a matter of rewriting history. It's a matter of telling history many times for the first time."
Right.
I'm not a fan of Mr. Santorum, if you can't tell.
Right. Well, let me put his comment into a little context. Studies show that the probable indigenous population in 1492, when Columbus first hit this side of the world, in North America, was 60 million. For comparison, Europe's population at the time was 70 to 88 million, spread over less than half the area. So there was already a thriving culture here, with all the Native American tribes that there were. And basically, U.S. authorities and, people acting on their own wiped these people out. I mean, you take the largest Indian tribe there is in America right now, which I believe is the Cherokee, and they're a fraction of what they were in the 1600s. And the thing is, by all accounts, the very first time anybody encountered these people, they were friendly. I mean, the Pilgrims wouldn't have survived had the Native Americans not shown them how to grow crops and when to plant. And how do they repay them? They killed them. I mean, it's just crazy.
It's just a disgusting comment, and one more disgusting example of
from a disgusting human.
Yeah, absolutely. And I told you this quote either yesterday. Yeah, I think it was yesterday. I told you this quote, but it's from a John Prine song, and John Prine said, "Some humans ain't human."
Yep.
And it's the truth, and it just goes to show that we're going to have to keep fighting for minority representation, for minority viewpoints to be shown.
Right.
And that's what's so funny about white supremacists. They're so scared of being a minority because they know how they've treated other minorities.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So speaking of disgusting humans, that brings us to our last topic, a top of the heap disgusting human by the name of Wayne Lapierre.
Yeah, apparently he went on a hunting trip in 2013 in Botswana in Africa. And
Yep.
really, I sometimes I'll say a term and then after I say it, I cringe a little bit. I hate to even call this a hunting trip because it's not really what it was. It's paid animal exploitation.
Yeah, it's an
And
assassination attempt.
yeah, and it's
sure.
basically where these multimillionaires and billionaires pay local guides who don't have much money, in a lot of cases, to break local law and put them in position to be able to assassinate a perfectly innocent animal that's not harming anybody. There's no reason other than for that hunter's ego and
Yep.
hubris to kill that beautiful animal.
Right.
And it's what it is, and it's disgusting. It's the same. I mean, you probably know about these in Texas. There's places where you can go hunt deer where they have the deer like fenced in
Yep.
and things like that. Those hunting reserves is what they call them. And I mean, it's just disgusting that this is still even something that goes on.
Right. Well, and this has been around a long time. So most people don't know this story, but they'll know the product. So everybody knows the phrase teddy bear, right? But not many people know how that came to be. So what happened was one of the most famous Republicans of all time, probably third behind Lincoln and Reagan, is Teddy Roosevelt. So Teddy Roosevelt was in Wyoming on a bear hunt, and they hadn't seen any bear all day. And so somebody had like a captive bear cub, and they put a noose around its neck and tied it to a tree and brought Teddy out and said, "There's your bear. Go ahead and kill it." And Teddy Roosevelt refused and got disgusted and told them how terrible they were for even suggesting the thing. Well, a cartoonist for a newspaper was there and saw this taking place, drew the cartoon and called it Teddy's Bear. And that's how we got the phrase teddy bear. And so there's a guy who had some integrity. He stood up and said, "No, I'm not going to do that." These elephants, these were elephants that they killed. They're shortly after this hunt, they were placed on the endangered species. So everybody knew they were getting close, right? That makes it even more disgusting. Wayne Lapierre is such a great hunter that it took him 4 shots and he still didn't kill the animal. One of his sidekicks had to come along and kill it for him. And then his wife shot one straight in the head that was looking at him, trying to figure out what was going on. These are smart creatures. These are creatures with brains bigger than ours that are just as smart as us, if not smarter. And she shot it in the head, didn't kill it. So she had to go up and, while she's bragging about how big he is and talking about you're a good fella. I mean, it's just disgusting to watch. We're going to put the link in the underneath the video so you can go see it for yourselves. But this is disgusting behavior. And the only reason it came out was that the National Rifle Association, which Wayne Lapierre is the president of, and for years has steered it away from its mission and into basically political activism. They're
political activism on behalf of the gun manufacturers,
right.
I might add.
Yeah, exactly. And they're in a major bankruptcy trial, and then they're in they're being sued by their longtime ad agency, Ackerman McQueen. And so this video came out as part of that. And Lapierre's testimony is also in this article, where he basically says, Mr. McQueen, can't think of his for Angus. Is it Angus McQueen? Yeah.
Yep.
He's the one who encouraged him to buy all these, expensive suits and to take his wife on all these, big getaways and buy her jewelry and have her hair designed by, a guy who, charges $1,000 an hour and does hairstyling for many of the major stars. I mean, they were just living large over their members, contributions and keeping it all hush hush. And now they're being sued over it and they want to blame somebody else. So here's hoping the bankruptcy goes through. And I hope they have to liquidate the NRA, because it has ceased being what it was founded for a long time ago. And when you have someone like George H.W. Bush resigning their lifetime membership because of the stuff they're pulling, in that case, it was their backing of armor-piercing bullets for the public, which didn't go through, by the way. I mean, that just shows you what kind of a crappy organization they've become.
Well, and I'm just going to add a couple things too. And one of them is everybody out there, when you give to a charity, you should do your homework on the charity that you're giving to. And I say charity loosely, but any of these organizations, when you give money, there's tax documents they have to file on their website, but you should know how much that CEO of that organization makes. And the fact that there's millions of people out there giving $25 a year, whatever it is, to get their NRA hat and their NRA sticker, and millions and millions of that is being spent on this type of grossness is unbelievable. And you know, anybody that with a heart and a conscience that watches that video understands that those animals didn't have to die. And what if they could have taken that money and spent it on breeding programs and things like that, in order to, so that generations from now we'll still have elephants in the wild.
Right.
It's just disgusting behavior, and by a disgusting person. And we've talked about projection before, but particularly in today's right wing, there's a ton of projection. You hear them complain about parts of the culture that feel entitled. Oh,
Right.
these people feel entitled to that unemployment payment. They feel entitled to that $1,400 stimulus check. They feel entitled to it. I
Right.
can't think of anybody more entitled than Wayne Lapierre,
Right.
the guy that feels entitled to $1,000 suits and to go hunting big game. And again, hunting's not the right term. Trapping and executing big game that has no need to be killed.
Yep.
I mean, it's gross. While there's people in Botswana who are hungry, he's spending thousands, if not millions of dollars to be able to kill these animals. And then, as we talked about on the pregame show, have the animals cut up and illegally transferred back to the US, because it's against the law, I believe, to transport those into the United States. And on top of that, taking the elephant legs and making chairs out of them.
Yeah, bar stools. Yeah. Yeah, he ought to be arrested for that. So, but as we've seen and talked about time and time again, there's one justice system for the rich and another justice system for the rest of us. Yeah. Enough about him. So,
yeah. Well, that brings us to the end of this episode, I believe. We ran a little bit long tonight, but it's been a good episode.
yeah.
I'd encourage everybody, on that last note, get involved with an animal charity if you can. Support your local humane society or no-kill shelter. Do what you can. Animals bring, I know they do me, I know they do G-Man as well, bring us a lot of happiness in our lives. And there's lots of ways you can support animals. And so I would encourage you, get out, give a donation, give it in Wayne Lapierre's honor.
Right.
And support. There's a lot of great organizations out there you can support. We're getting, what we say, 200 million shots in arms so far.
Yep.
So everybody, I'd encourage you, if you haven't gotten your vaccine, get your vaccine. It's going to help everything. It's going to help our, even if we're the most rabid capitalists, it's going to help our economy. The more people we have vaccinated, but do it for everybody else's safety too. If you don't believe COVID's still a problem, Google COVID India.
Yeah. And
see what's happening there.
Bangladesh. Absolutely. One other stat real quick is that 40% of Americans that have received their first shot of the Pfizer or Moderna vaccine have yet to get their second. Not have missed their appointment for their second. So there's 40% of the people get their first shot, never get their second. So make sure you get that second shot. It's going to put you over the top, and it's going to keep us all safe. Well, that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and we'll see you on the next one.
Take care.